Hi everybody, I'm Advait. Welcome to my channel. I have with me here Dr. Aakash Hans, and he had passed his OET um, before the math season started in 2020. And this video is about his experience of how he passed OET medicine. So we're just gonna cover what is OET and how Dr. Hans passed this exam. So how are you, doctor?
I'm good, Dr. Advait. It's nice to see you again. And a huge shout out to all the viewers watching. And let's hope the next couple of or next few minutes can be useful for all of you for passing your or acing your OET exam.
All right. So tell us about OET. What is that exam?
So basically, the OET stands for Occupational English Test, and it's a glorified English test, but for medical professionals. So you all must have heard about other English exams like the PLAB and maybe even sorry, not the PLAB. I'm sorry, the IELTS and the TOEFL exam. So basically, for whenever someone wants to work in one of these countries, for example, the UK, Australia, and even the US, the major concern for all the universities or even the companies who hire is the English proficiency of the candidate. I mean, on paper, you may be a very good candidate with stellar scores and a good experience, but all of that is in your home country. And let's be honest, a lot of countries do not speak English as a first language, and it's fair for these countries to roll out exams which is more of a standardized scoring system for candidates, and they can display their proficiency of the English language so that both parties are satisfied with the test. So, as I said, it's an English proficiency measuring scale, and the OET was just recently rolled out by the US medical licensing examination, that is the USMLE, for purposes of ECFMG certification. So, for all of you who are new, the ECFMG is the Educational Commission for Foreign Medical Graduates, and basically it's a body that helps international medical graduates like us and like me and Dr. Advair to match into residency programs in the United States itself. So as you may all know, the Step 2 CS was one of the requirements for getting the ACFMD certificate, but because of the COVID-19 pandemic, the exam was discontinued, and even recently it was, I think, discontinued for good. And in its place, OET was introduced as another exam that candidates can take and still get ECFMD certified, which is a very important requirement for all the international medical graduates to at least match into or maybe even apply for the match.
All right.
So, in a nutshell, it's an English exam that you need to pass, and it's a substitute for the USMLE Step 2 CS. CS stands for Clinical Skills. So, and it has basically four sections, anything and everything that you can do in English, essentially. So, that's reading, writing, speaking, and listening. I don't think there is anything else that you can do in English. So, pretty much covers the four sections of the test.
Okay.
It's a 1 day test, and usually it's divided into two parts. So the speaking part is a part that you do separately in the same center but in a different room, and the other three parts that are reading, listening, and speaking, sorry, reading, listening, and writing, those parts you do in another part of the or another part of the test center.
Which
It
one
all
was the
happens.
easiest for you?
So personally for me, I guess going into the test, I was pretty comfortable with reading and listening, and speaking is, it all depends on how you speak in those 10 or 20 minutes. So I may be able to speak to you right now naturally because I've known you for a long time and I'm not nervous at all, and I'm just chilling in my house, and that can significantly change for some people when they are put in an environment where their speaking is being analyzed by someone. So yeah, for me personally, I guess going into the exam, reading and listening were the ones I was not too worried about, but the exam does do the unexpected sometimes. And I guess listening didn't go well for me.
Okay.
At least that's what I thought. But I was able to clear the exam uh, with a pretty good margin. And I guess the minimum required score or the grade is a B. So they basically give you a grade of A, B, C, D, and E. So it goes from A to E, with A being the highest and E the lowest you can score.
Okay.
And there's a numerical score also adjacent to the alphabetical score. So I think it ranges from somewhere from 0 to 500, and it increases with increments of 10 points. So, for example, 500 to 450 would be like an A grade, something like that. I may have to check up on that, but just giving you a brief idea as to what the scoring system is like.
Right.
So, for passing the OET for the purposes of USMLE, you need to score a minimum of B on all the four sections. The OET can also be used for registration with the GMC, that's the Medical Council in the United Kingdoms, and it's another test you can take for English proficiency. Some people opt for the IELTS exam, and some opt for the OET.
Okay. So how did you prepare for the OET? Cancellation of the CS. I think you had already registered for CS and it got cancelled, and
Yep.
then this was a totally new test. So being in a new, in totally a new setting, how did you prepare for OET? With Was there any information? Did anyone guide you?
You said it exactly right, Dr. Advait. It was uncharted territory because OET has been here for quite a while, I guess. It's still a new test, but like I said, OET was previously being used by some candidates for PLAB and for purposes of registration with the British Medical Council. But it was a new aspect to the USMLE exam. And many candidates who were giving it for the first time, just like me, had concerns regarding whether they would increase the difficulty of the test or not, because the USMLE likes to hold up its standards of even English proficiency. I guess for me, the most important part was having a lot of information as to what the test tests. So, what the test wants you to be efficient in. And I guess the OET website was really helpful for me. They have a lot of sample tests, a lot of mock tests that you can use and practice repeatedly, if not once at least. And and then, well, I guess I was in touch with a couple of my friends who were in the same boat, who had registered for the CS, paid a handsome fee of around 1,200 to $1,300, and because of the pandemic and understandable safety concerns, the exam was cancelled and the OET was introduced. So I guess just staying in touch with them and giving these mock tests gave me a good idea as to whether I was prepared or ready to give the exam or not. So um, the I think the aspect of the test that I thought I would not struggle with, but I did, was, at least in the preparation phase of the test, was the speaking part, because speaking is different in the OET. Understand that the main difference between OET and the IELTS exam is that the IELTS exam is not essentially testing you on medical literature, and the OET, so every section you appear for, the writing, reading, listening, and speaking, it will all be medical related. It will be related to medicine in some shape or form. And in IELTS, it's just a simple English test, and you won't be talking about even the ABC of medicine. So that does pose an advantage to some candidates who have a basic knowledge of English, can converse and understand English, but maybe not uh, have a advanced vocabulary, or may not be that comfortable in carrying on a long conversation in English. So I guess in that sense, the OET helps because uh, you will be encountering a lot of medical terms in these question papers, and that usually you know the meaning of. So there won't be any complicated words apart from like medical jargon. So if you do not know what anastomosis mean, then maybe you're in trouble. But I don't think there are many doctors out there that do not know what these words mean. But if you're a non-medical professional and you're giving a medical OET, you would definitely not know what the word anastomosis or synapse means. So in that aspect, the OET does pose an advantage to some people who feel like they're able to better converse when the English language is strictly medical. But the test has its own challenges, and I guess for me, it was speaking and just talking about or taking a history from a patient about whatever the problem is. So in speaking, you get two placards. So placards are basically cards that are handed to you, and on the card is information as to what your role is. So it will start off by saying, so you are the medical practitioner in a clinic, and a patient has come up to you with complaints of postnasal drip and just feeling uncomfortable in the abdominal region after eating food or when he's fasting. So you'll have a basic idea as to what you need to ask him about, and they'll describe the setting, and then they'll specify what they want you to ask. So you don't have to, in any shape or form, use your medical knowledge. All the questions will be written down for you, and you need to ask them in your own way.
Okay.
And it's just basically testing whether or not you can speak in English. So in no way or form are you required to come up with a diagnosis and a treatment plan.
Okay.
Whatever's written on the placard, so it's like a script. It's like
Okay.
the scripts the actors get. They just have to speak it out, but in their own form. So it will be like in points. So like I described the setting to you, you're a doctor and probably the patient has GERD, that is gastroesophageal reflux. So there'll be small keynotes underneath the setting which says ask the patient about any weight loss, ask the patient about any family history of cancer, ask the patient about his dietary habits, ask the patient about maybe smoking, and then advise the patient what the possible diagnosis could be, advise all the tests you would advise for this patient, for example an endoscopy, just to be sure. So it will tell you exactly what you need to say. You don't need to use your medical knowledge here. It's just about speaking, being able to speak and converse in English.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. So, how many days did you take for preparation, and what did you do?
So I guess my preparation was on and off because I was also preparing for another test, the USMLE Step 3. So essentially, I would say it was 4 to 6 weeks, but it was really on and off for me. The last week and a half, I was just studying, just practicing the OET sample tests, which were very useful as far as I was concerned. And I was preparing with a friend closely, so that was advantageous because especially for the speaking part. So sometimes my friend would play the patient role, and I would be the medical professional, and sometimes my friend would be the medical professional, and I would be the patient. So we did practice in person, but yeah, for people who are not in for obvious reasons because of the pandemic. If you cannot meet your friends, but someone's preparing for it, just like Dr. Advait Zoom called me, you can Zoom call one of your friends who's preparing for the OET, and one of you can play the role of a patient, and vice versa. So this way, you'll be able to give each other feedbacks, and at the same time, you'll be able to prepare. And it will kind of mimic the exact situation you will be put in the exam. So in
Okay.
the exam, you'll be sitting in front of a real person. So the closest you can be to a real person in today's world is maybe a Zoom meeting,
Yeah.
or grab one of your family members and just they can play patient. I mean that'll be easy. So whatever problem they have. So if my younger brother has a problem of GERD, I'll be like, yeah, just explain whatever you feel like, and I'll talk to you. So there is a placard for even the patient.
Okay.
So so there's a script for the patient and there's a script for the doctor, that is you. So even the patient knows what he has to say. So he won't be saying something completely ridiculous that, oh, you're a bad doctor, I want to talk to you, I want another doctor. That is not going to happen. The patient also needs to stick to the script. So nothing unexpected or out of the ordinary is going to happen during the speaking test. It's all scripted, but at the same time, you have to do your best to make it look like a natural conversation.
So, did you take OET in your home country or in USA?
So when the OET was rolled out, I was in India, and India was under complete lockdown. So we could not get milk. So I guess OET was out of the questions. Like milk and groceries, you could not get. So I don't think OET centers were open and functioning at that time. But since I was registered for the USMLE Step 3, which can only be given in the United States, I had a good enough reason to board one of the Vande Bharat mission rescue flights and go to the US.
Okay.
And I had registered for one of the OET centers over there. So my center was in the national state of Oregon, and the city was Portland.
Okay.
So that's where my OET center was. That's where I took it. At the time that I did register for the test, all the other centers were taken up. So I initially was planning to give it on the eastern coast, that is somewhere near New York or New Jersey, since that was the area I landed in first. But because all the dates were already taken and I was, I guess, a day late after the announcement to book a test, so that's all it takes, a day and all the seats are gone. I mean, especially for all the people who are listening and giving the PLAB exam, you must be able to appreciate it. Just takes a couple of minutes and all the seats are gone. So pretty much the same thing happened to me, but I was lucky enough to get a date and a center. It was, although on the completely opposite side of the country, but I was able to make things work out, and I took it on the western coast instead of the eastern coast.
Oh, wow. So, tell me about whether the test was computer based or paper based.
So I opted for the paper-based test, and like I said, I took it in the initial few months of the announcement. So the computer-based test had still not been rolled out for the general population.
Okay.
So I had no option but to register for the paper-based test. I am aware that the computer-based test is now available for booking, and so I don't think I'll be able to shed much light on the computer-based test. But as far as the paper-based test was concerned, it was pretty much like any. So you're basically given the option of writing with a pen or a pencil. I chose a pencil because I just thought it's going to be easier for me to erase whatever I do not feel I need to include. So my test was a paper-based test, and I remember there were a total of 20 candidates at the test center, and they were divided into batches of 10. So the first 10 people went for the speaking test, while the other 10 people were sent to a separate room where we sat down on separate tables and we were given the other three sections of the test, that is reading, writing, and listening. So for the listening part, there'll be speakers in the room. You will not get individual headsets or like a walkie-talkie you can play and pause whenever you like. So it's like a live announcement. There'll be like a speaker in the roof or maybe in the walls.
Mhm.
And once they hit play, you need to be on point. If you miss a point, you cannot ask the proctor to pause and rewind because it's playing for all the other candidates too. So listening can be challenging if you're not listening attentively. Like you need to be on point, and that's why I guess I struggled with it a bit during the exam because there are questions written on a piece of paper. So you're reading the question and the options given right underneath the question. At the same time, you need to listen to the conversation that's going on. And according to what the conversation is, you need to choose the right answer. So if you somehow miss even sentence or like 2 seconds of the conversation, sometimes that can result in you missing a question.
Okay.
So listening is a thing you should practice, and so the OET sample tests make it very easy for you to uh, be aware of whatever's going on. So they'll have a pre-recorded conversation that you can play, but you add in the sample test you do have the option of pausing it, rewinding it, maybe even playing it from the beginning. But what I would advise anyone who's preparing for the OET is to, once you've hit play, you don't hit pause, you don't do anything. Hit play, maybe connect your laptop to a speaker, keep the speaker at least 10 feet away from you so that you can't reach it, and let the recording play, and just focus on what's in front of you, that is the question paper. And if you miss a question, you miss a question, it's all right. You can miss at least I guess 5 to 6, or maybe if I'm incorrect, like 6 to 7 questions, and you will still pass. So do not worry about if you miss a question. So sometimes what happens is that you're listening, right? The conversation is going on and you miss a question, and all your flow is broken, and you're like, oh, I missed this question, and then you're taken aback. You stop listening, you stop even reading, and before you realize, you've missed 5 more seconds of the conversation and maybe two more questions. So if you miss a question, you cannot understand what the answer is, leave it, mark whatever you have to. What we do is we just mark B, or like any option that I had decided that if I do not know the answer, I'll mark B. That's all right, but I do not need to miss the other questions, because the questions go with the conversation. So what's been talked about in the starting of the conversation will be your first question, and what's been talked about in the end of the conversation will be your last question. So you don't have to look for the question. The
Okay.
question is in order, and it's in correspondence to how the conversation flows.
Okay.
So you won't have to locate the question. Okay, oh, where's the question? What are they talking about? If it's the starting of the conversation, the first question will be about the starting of the conversation. So you need to just follow the conversation along with the questions. If you miss a question, do not panic, do not stop. Please continue, because there are 10 more questions and you need to finish. And the recording will not be played again. You cannot ask anyone, and you cannot make notes for the recording, because if you think, oh, I'll listen to the entire recording and then I'll make notes and then I'll do the questions. No, because as soon as the recording is over, you just get 30 seconds.
Okay.
That's it. The section is over. So you won't have enough time to look at your notes and then do 10 questions in 30 seconds. So you have to, the format of the test forces you to simultaneously listen and mark the answers. So that is challenging. And
Oh,
that's a different challenge that the exam poses.
wow. So, did you prepare anything else from the sample test? Did you take any course or anything like
So as it turns out, I had taken the IELTS before, and I think it was the same thing for me. I prepared with the same friend, a close friend of mine, and we didn't take any coaching or any sort of extra classes, just the sample tests. And IELTS was a breeze compared to the OET. So there are some people who have the opinion that the OET is easier than the IELTS, or the IELTS is easier than OET. I would say that's an individualized opinion. For some, the IELTS is an easier test. For some, the OET is an easier test. So I would not think too much into it. Uh, every test is different. So if you're preparing for the PLAB or if you're preparing for the USMLE, uh, the syllabus is the same, right? The content is the same. It's medical knowledge. It doesn't change from UK to US. If a patient has GERD in or GERD in UK or US, the management is pretty much the same. It's just the finer aspects of the treatment that are different. But we very well know that if we are preparing for an exam, we need to do the question banks, we need to do the mock test, because some exams favor some topics and some questions, while other exams favor other topics and other questions. So it is very much about your basic English, but if you're taking either one of the exams, not just the OET, but even IELTS, do practice sample tests of that exam so that you are in touch with what is to be expected, and you'll be ready come exam day. You should not be seeing stuff for the first time on exam day. That's how you fail.
that?
That's how you fail exams. You could have easily passed. So put in your work. It doesn't take a lot of effort or preparation to prepare for the OET, but that is again my opinion. There are people who are more intelligent than me, which tell us course, and who would get a lot of interviews, but they struggle with the speaking aspect of English, or, for example, other aspects of English. So I guess the important part is to realize what your weakness is, and if you feel like you need help, you can even take the help of a coaching class, or study in groups, or just start talking in English. Even if English is not your mother tongue, make it your mother tongue for a week or a month, however long it takes you to be comfortable in conversing in that language. But to each its own. And I would say there's nothing to be ashamed of. If it's not your primary language, you have all the right to take all the help you can. There is a lot of stigma in many countries about people who cannot speak well in English, but sometimes these are the people who invent stuff. There'll be a chap from, for example, from our country, there'll be chaps from Uttar Pradesh and Bihar who are way smarter than us, but they struggle in English, and somehow we make a big deal out of it. It's just a matter of time. If that person starts practicing in English, sky is the limit. So do not hold anything back. Just like the USMLE or the PLAB or NEET or AIMS exams, it's an exam. You need to prepare. You need to know what's important according to the exam, and you need to prepare those topics better than the others. And yeah, I guess just be confident in what you're doing.
Any last thoughts for our viewers?
Um, the computer-based test, what I've heard, is easier to like give compared to the paper-based test, but that's just something I've heard. Uh, at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter what format you're giving the test in, even if it's paper-based or computer-based. Make sure you're practicing according to what your format is. So, for example, I had a paper-based test, so I used to take out printouts of the sample test because I wanted the paper to be in hand. I
Okay.
mimic the exam like conditions. So I used to take out the printouts, and instead of typing, I was writing. So on a computer-based test, instead of writing, you'll be typing. So people who cannot type fast or have some problems with typing, I would really advise them to get that sorted. And for people, for example, who write but are not blessed with legible writing, just to make the writing a little more legible, so that you can get the score you deserve, and the examiner should be able to read what you've written. So see, like I said, even it's the OET, right? But the paper-based is vastly different from the computer-based test. So make sure whatever form of test you opt for, you practice in that form too. Do not be taking out printouts for a computer-based test. Do it on the computer, and vice versa.
Amazing, Dr. Hans. Thank you for guiding us and telling us your experience of OET. And we definitely would like to hear from you more on the next few episodes of this podcast. Thank you. Thank you for your
Definitely,
time.
it's been a pleasure, Dr. Advait. Thank you for taking all the time, and I hope this session was useful for all our listeners and viewers. Have a nice one, and be safe out there.
All right. Bye.
All right.